Hello, dear students, good morning. Students, let's start reading the last part of this play. Today we will complete it anyhow. Okay, so let's start reading it from this statement as made by Mrs. Fitzgerald. Mrs. Pearson, don't got soft on them again, else it all have been wasted. So while suggesting Mrs. Fitzgerald tells her that she should not show her softness towards her family members, otherwise they will again start behaving very roughly with her, okay, just like the previous days. Otherwise, she will, otherwise it all will have get wasted. Mrs. Pearson, I will try not to, Mrs. Fitzgerald. While assuring Mrs. Pearson tells that she will try her best. She will try her best to be very strict to her family members, whom she has taught very good lessons of morality. Mrs. Fitzgerald, they have not had as long as I would like to have given them. Another hour or two's rough treatment might have made it certain. They have not had as long as I would like to have given them. Another hour or two's rough treatment might have made it certain. Mrs. Fitzgerald again tells something to Mrs. Pearson, bete, saying it that if she remains, if she remains or if she acts very roughly, very powerfully, very courageously, with them only for 1 or 2 more hours, they will surely start, doing their works accordingly. Mrs. Pearson, I am sure they will do better now, though I don't know how I am going to explain. Mrs. Pearson, who looks so much delighted, tells Mrs. Fitzgerald that she hopes so. She hopes so. They all will surely behave with her very nicely, and they will act very correctly. They will do all the works in a better way. Mrs. Fitzgerald, severely, don't you start any explaining or apologizing, or you are done for. Once again, Mrs. Fitzgerald suggests her friend, Mrs. Pearson, that she should not put any long explanation before her family members, before her husband and her 2 children, and she should not feel any sorry. She should not feel sorry for making any kind of mistake. No, if she does so, they will surely get full advantage of her leniency, of her moderacy. Mrs. Pearson, with spirit, it's all right for you, Mrs. Fitzgerald. Mrs. Pearson, speaking some words in a very happy mood, and she tells Mrs. Fitzgerald that it's all right for you. She tells Mrs. Fitzgerald that she has really spoken and suggested her words very correctly, very rightly. After all, they aren't your husband and children. And she also tells her that she knows it very well now how to tackle them. And these the persons don't belong to her family. These the persons don't belong to her family. They belong to her family. That's why she need not get worried. Mrs. Fitzgerald, impressively, now you listen to me. You admitted yourself you were spoiling them and they didn't appreciate you. Mrs. Fitzgerald, getting so much impressed to the voice of Mrs. Pearson, but again starts saying something to her, and firstly she tells her to listen to her voice very carefully. She also reminds her that once she had already admitted it on her part that it was she who had spoiled her family members on her part, and she had accepted her fault also, her mistake also. And she also told her that they never appreciated her, they never regarded her. Any apologize, any apologize and explanations, and you will be straight back where you were. That's why being a bit concerned or bit worried. She also finally advises her friend Mrs. Pearson that if she apologizes for the little mistakes, if she okay uh, gets herself so much kind and sympathetic and tender to her family members, and if she gives so long explanations, so she will surely come back where she was in the previous days. She would find herself in the same critical situation. They would again start insulting her, dominating over her, dominating on her. I am warning you, dear, just give them a look, a tone of voice, and now again to suggest you might be tough with them if you want it to be, and it ought to work. Anyhow, we can test it. Mrs. Fitzgerald gives suggestion after suggestions, and now she suggests her that she should not be so much soft to them, she must be very rough to them, she should not be so much sympathetic to them, as her sympathy can again spoil them. That's why she should be very strict while tackling them, while behaving them, and she should not give them any kind of loose talk, any kind of soft voice also. She should not speak them so softly, so politely. She suggested she suggests her that she should be very strict if she wants to, see them all, in a very in good manners and in a disciplined life. Mrs. Pearson asked Mrs. Fitzgerald, how can they test the nature and behavior of her family members. Mrs. Fitzgerald, well, what is it you would them do? Well, what is it you would like them to do that they don't do? Mrs. Fitzgerald tells Mrs. Pearson that she should ask, on some days, she should ask her family members one by one to do the works, which they do not like to work, which they do not like to do the same work. And if they make any objection, it means they have not, uh, they have not put themselves on the right path, they have not corrected themselves. Stop at home for once, and in order to check it whether they have been fully well mannered or not, you should also tell them not to go outside the house. You should also ask them to stop your house permanently. Mrs. Pearson, yes, and give me a hand with supper. Mrs. Pearson gets agreed, and she tells Mrs. Fitzgerald that she should give her a hand while taking the evening meal in her house. Mrs. Fitzgerald, anything you would like them to do that you enjoy, whether they do or not. Mrs. Fitzgerald tells her that if she should check it out on her part whether they make up their mind to do the works which are assigned to them by her. If they do all the works quite honestly and without any objection, it means they have been totally well mannered. Mrs. Pearson, hesitating, well, yes, I like a nice game of rummy, but of course I hardly ever have one except at Christmas. Mrs. Pearson tells Mrs. Fitzgerald that she likes really the game of rummy, which is played with the cards. But she can hardly get any time in her life, as she only plays the game with her family members at the holy festival, Christmas. Mrs. Fitzgerald getting up, that's all. That will do then. She moves toward the door left, then turns, but remember, keep firm and you have had it. She opens the door, calling, "Hoy, you can come in now," coming away from the door and moving right slightly, quietly, but remembering firm hand. Mrs. Fitzgerald now starting leaving her seat. She begins to leave her seat. She starts to rise herself from the seat. Then that will do then. She tells her friend Mrs. Pearson that should she should do the same as suggested. As suggested. Okay. She moves towards the door left, then turns. She starts moving towards the door, left side door. Again she turns back. Again she turns to tell something to Mrs. Pearson. Okay, but remember, keep firm. And before she leaves the place better, she again suggests Mrs. Pearson to be very strict to her family members. She opens the door, calling. When she opens the door, she finds George Pearson and Doris Pearson sitting outside the door. Okay, since they had been sent outside the door by Mrs. Pearson, saying that she wants to have a conversation with Mrs. Fitzgerald. Okay, secretly. However, you can come in now. And while calling their attention, Mrs. Fitzgerald tells them that they now come inside the house freely, and okay she again starts coming away from the door and moving right slightly quietly. Now she is about to leave the door, though she has not left the place, but she is about to leave the door quietly. But remember a firm hand. She is really so much suspected, and that's why she speaks these words, and she tells Mrs. Pearson that she should remember, that she must be quite firm and quite strict. George, Doris, and Cyril stand together in circle. In through the doorway, these three persons of Pearson family stand together in circle. Okay, at the door sill, SILL sill, threshold. दहलीज बोलते उसको. Looking apprehensively at Mrs. Pearson, fearfully. When they start looking at Mrs. Pearson, they seem to have much fear in their mind, and their faces have already fallen, and they think that she might again scold them if they speak any word. I'm just off. Now Mrs. Fitzgerald tells Mrs. Pearson that she is just going out to let you enjoy yourself, and she tells her that she has let her alone in her house to enjoy her life with her family members. The family looks anxiously at Mrs. Pearson, who smiles. When these three persons of Pearson family start looking at Mrs. Pearson, in a very worrisome condition, Mrs. Pearson also looks at them, and she gives a very nice smile. She smiles at them. When Mrs. Pearson smiles at them, they get relieved, much relieved. They smile back at her. They get much relieved, and they start smiling at Mrs. Pearson. Doris anxiously, yes, mother. Doris Pearson firstly speaks, who seemed to have much fear, much worry in her mind at this time also, and she asked her mother what she wants to say her, and she wants to ask her mother whether she has really changed herself, whether she is really so much pleased with them. Mrs. Pearson smiling, saying that you don't want to go out. Mrs. Pearson again with a smiling face tells Doris Pearson that she expects it that she won't go outside the house without permission. I tell you what I thought we would do. And she also tells her that she has already told her what she would like to do, what they would like to do in their family, and she should remember all the instructions. Mrs. Fitzgerald giving a final warning, remember. Again Mrs. Fitzgerald appears there, and she tells Mrs. Pearson that she must remember her all the suggestive words very sincerely. Mrs. Pearson nodding, then looking sharply at the family. Mrs. Pearson giving the signal of her head, nodding her head in affirmative, and then she starts looking sharply at the family who are standing all around her. No objections, I hope. She asks them whether they have any objections against the voice of Mrs. Fitzgerald. कि आपको कोई किसी प्रकार की तकलीफ है श्रीमती फिट्जरोल ने जो कुछ कहा उसको लेकर के. जॉर्ज हम्बली नो. मदर, द वर्ड मदर स्टैंड्स फॉर द मिस्ट्रेस ऑफ द family, the boss of the family, the housewife of the family. George speaks his words very humbly, very politely, saying that they have no objections and they will do what she will ask them to do. Whatever you say, They will surely follow her words, they will surely obey her words, and they will always regard her as the mistress of their family. Mrs. Pearson smiling, I thought we would have a nice family game of rummy, and then you children could get the supper ready while I have a talk with your father. Mrs. Pearson, with a smiling face, tells her all family members, saying that they would like to play a game of rummy with the cards that night, but firstly she assigns a task to her children, saying that they must prepare the evening meal, which is known as supper. While okay, at the same time she would like to have a private conversation with their father. George firmly shoots me. George firmly says George says to his two children very strongly, saying that okay, he is totally he is totally agree with her. Okay, and whatever Mrs. Pearson has told them really shoots him very nicely. He looks challengingly at the children. George starts looking at both the children very orderly, in a orderly form, challengingly. What about you two? George asks them what they want to do, what they want to say, okay, regarding the said words, regarding the spoken words, okay, by Mrs. Pearson. Cyril has hastily, yes, that's all right. Cyril gets agreed and says that he is totally agreed, okay, and he would like to go with the words of his mother. Doris hesitating. Well, Doris, who finds herself in a suspected mood, does not respond very sharply, very quickly, very frankly. So at this, Mrs. Pearson sharply, what? Speak up. At this, Mrs. Pearson again gets angry, and she, okay, has some authority in her voice, and then she speaks. Then she asks, what she really means to say? What she really means to say? Speak up. She asks to speak up the words again. Doris hastily, very quickly, oh, I think it would be lovely. Doris also gets agreed, and she says that whatever her mother would say, okay, they would surely accept each and every voice, each and every word of okay, her mother. Mrs. Pearson smiling, goodbye, Mrs. Fitzgerald. Come again soon. Mrs. Pearson again with a smiling face, okay, bids goodbye to Mrs. Fitzgerald, and she also gives her okay an invitation in advance, saying that they must okay they must meet in her in her house together. She also invites Mrs. Fitzgerald in advance, saying that she must come to meet them again in their house. They would be waiting for her. Mrs. Fitzgerald, yes dear. Mrs. Fitzgerald also gives her positive response, saying that she would like to come to meet them again in their house. Night all, have a nice time. And before she leaves the place, okay, Mrs. Fitzgerald also bids them good night, okay, bids good night to all of them, and says that they must have a very nice time in their family. Mrs. Fitzgerald exits left, speaking such words, and okay, bidding goodbye and good night to all the members of the Pearson family. Mrs. Fitzgerald exits left. She leaves the place from the left side door, and the family cluster round mother as the curtain falls, and all the family members, including these three persons, George Pearson, Doris Pearson, and Cyril Pearson. These three persons stand again in circle all around Mrs. Pearson. Our mother stands for Mrs. Pearson, okay, who has got the status of a true owner of the mistress of the house. Okay, as the curtain falls, as the play ends, when the play ends, they all okay stand together in unity in circle around Mrs. Pearson, indicating it that they have really stood together, and they have really started okay living in a very disciplined manner as per the voice of the mistress of the honor of the boss of the family. So such kind, in this way, as you have seen, the lost honor, the lost status of a mother of a family of the house, okay, has been regained by her in a very tricky manner with the help of Mrs. Fitzgerald. My dear students, now we have completed this chapter today, and now I think you must be very okay. You must have taken all the explanations very interestingly, very happily. In case you have found any kind of problem, I extremely feel so much okay. Sorry for any inconvenience which has been okay seen by you in my explanation, and I would like to okay give you my explanation in some more and more simple and lucid language, and I would be okay awaiting for your suggestions and responses in the days come by. Thank you.